many people are normally watching?
Not too many watching, and we are live. We did decide to go live a couple years ago when we had our equipment anyways, but most of the people consume it on audio later on. So,
Good.
it's really like an audio podcast, but we just do it live because we can now. But we don't, we're kind of in and out of YouTube. Sometimes we're in strike mode with YouTube. So, like it's just the live platforms really like we got a little bit everywhere, but
Good.
that's the way it is. But we've got Dennis Henson with us tonight. This will be a fun chat about Real Impact Daily Inspiration, a book that you've got out. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. Like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of it overlaps with some of the stuff we've talked about. We've had similar authors that have their own sort of like self-help type books, and we talk a lot about Napoleon Hill. We've got a lot of audiobooks out of like some of the classic New Thought type stuff. And I know your book's kind of not, technically New Thought, but there's a component of it, obviously, if it's about daily inspiration and daily reading. So is that something were you interested in sort of this type of thing before you came up with the idea for the book?
Well, I've been reading inspirational books and studying with inspirational speakers for almost 50 years. My first, I guess, was with Zig Ziglar. He had a reel-to-reel movie out of The Pump. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with that, Priming the Pump.
He's the OG, right? I mean, he's the original gangster of modern manifestation, kind of.
And then I've met a lot of motivational speakers in my time. And I met Jim Rohn before he was the famous Jim Rohn. He came to one of our sales seminars in Henson back in the 70s, and he was just getting started. And I've watched him through the years. Of course, he passed away a couple of years ago, but I watched him become super success, and I've listened to all of his stuff a million times. So yes, I'm really into that kind of thing.
You're muted.
But you hadn't really written in that genre, had you? Before you had written books before, but is this your first sort of step into that?
The books I've written in the past have been on real estate investing. I've been a real estate investor since 1970, so I've done it for quite a while. And I've taught real estate. And I have a number of students, and part of the training for the students is motivation, because one of the keys to being successful in real estate or sales of any kind is you have to be motivated. You have to, get up and want to go out and knock on doors and talk to people. So it was just a natural thing. In fact, it was a real estate podcast where someone asked me, what's the number one thing you teach your students to make them successful? What would be, if you just say one thing that would help our viewers more than anything else? I said, well, I have them change their habits. If they can form success habits, then they'll become successful. Then they said, what's the most important habit? So I thought a minute and I said, forming the habit of reading something positive that will move you toward your goal every day. So after the podcast was over, I thought, man, that was the right answer. Wouldn't it be great if someone would come up with an app or a tool or a book to help people form that habit? Then, man, it hit me like a lightning bolt. I thought, I've been collecting quotes, poems, and success stories for almost 50 years. I can put those together so that people can read every day in the time slots they have available. So if they come home in the middle of the night and they're exhausted, and I forgot to read today, they turn over to the back of the book and there's quotes. You can read 2 quotes and go to sleep thinking about a powerful quote. Now, if you do this year after year, time after time, Zig Ziglar said, little things add up little by little. If you only read 20 minutes a day, in a year, 200-page book, 20 minutes a day, in a year, you would have read 20 books, which is 19 more than the average person. Now that'll make a difference over time. Over 5, 10, 20 years, you'll become an expert if you're reading about whatever it is. If you want to become an attorney, you read about law. If you want to become a real estate investor, you read about that. So this is not limited to real estate investing, although it started that way. It can be for anything that you want to become.
I like it. What is it about reading that's so good for you? Like what's the difference between, doing that and let's say meditating in the morning, or clearing your mind and just sitting quietly, or listening to something, or doing a mantra in the mirror, or some sort of affirmation? Like why do you think reading is so powerful?
Well, okay, the more ways you can take in things, the more different ways, the better you'll learn. So, I'm old and have had some health issues, and so I walk every day for an hour or two, and I have plenty of time. So during that time, I listen to podcasts, I listen to audios that people have made, success things. So I think listening every day, reading every day, and actually going and talking with people, the more different ways you can take in the information. But the reading keeps you on track. It's kind of like your rudder. It reminds you, okay, this is where I'm going, this is what I want to do, and today I'm going to read until something hits me that I can think about and digest the rest of the day. Because it's not the quantity of the reading that matters, it's the quality. If you read something of good quality that moves you in the direction you want to move in, that can have a tremendous impact. My students are proof. I mean, the first part of the book is my students telling about their successes, and they have been tremendously successful. I mean, a lot more than me. My students are a lot more successful real estate investors than I am, because I put them on the right track. They listened, they read, they did the things that I asked them to do, and they went out and made fortunes. And so that made me look pretty good, and I appreciate them for that.
You mentioned at night when you get home before bed, having some powerful quotes sink in. Do you think it's more important to have something first thing in the morning to start your day off, or like at the end of the day to sort of subconsciously keep your mind even during sleep on something positive, or does it matter?
Well, people are busy. Some people, they're going to go on a trip, and they sit at the airport for 2.5 hours. Okay. Or maybe they got home really late and they're exhausted. Or maybe they get up and it just feels right for them to grab a book and start to read. I don't think it really matters what time of the day they decide to do that. I personally, when I get up first thing in the morning, is I try to practice gratitude. I call it the G vitamin. Gratitude lowers your blood pressure, it gives you energy. You can't be depressed when you're being grateful. When you're happy about your family and your home and my beautiful office, my wonderful staff. As I'm going over those things, it's just impossible to be depressed. I'll be happy. I love my life. I love my dog. I love my health. And so that's usually the first thing I do. But when I take in the education part, is usually when I'm walking. And then maybe before I go to bed, I'll pick up a book and read a couple of quotes or something. But I've been doing it for so long, it's a habit. The problem with most people is they don't have the habit yet. That's what the book is for. It's to get them past where they have to think about it. I don't ever have to think about it because of the habit. So once you form the habit, then the thinking is, you're past that.
Darren, do you have any questions or comments?
How did you get into all this? Is this something you just did you learn from it from someone else? Did you learn it you know, how did you kind of get into this manifestation thing? Because I mean, it's kind of all over the place when I started getting into it. Napoleon Hill's everywhere, and then there you got The Secret and all these offshoots and offshoots and offshoots. But you know, it was pretty obscure, you know, back then. So it must have been. It was, you know, I just sort of wonder what your sort of gateway was. Was it a Napoleon Hill book, or was it a
Yes,
Zig Ziglar book, or do you remember exactly what book it was?
yes. When I was a school teacher, I taught in high school. I was a band director, and at one point, I had the choice to become the band director at Georgia Tech, which my goal was to become a college band director. So they offered me the job at Georgia Tech, or I could go to Mississippi, the University of Mississippi. Ole Miss offered me a doctoral program for free. I mean, it's a fellowship. I could go there. So that was another choice. And then the third choice was to go to work with a sales company called Henson Incorporated in Tennessee. They offered me 20 times the salary that Georgia Tech offered me. Well, I was a kid, you know, I was 25, 27 years old, and that kind of money, I went there. I took the money. Okay. So the first thing they did was give me 3 books. They gave me Think and Grow Rich, Success, The Glenn Bland Method, and The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Then they also gave me the Henco Manual. And I read those books and I just was on fire. I mean, I went out and I made so much money. I got married, I bought a new home, I drove a Mercedes, I had anything I wanted because this is funny. I came from a poor family. You've heard that on TV, I guess. But anyway, I really did come from a poor family. I never did have any money. We were extremely poor. My father was a disabled veteran. So having the money and getting excited by making the sale made me want to read more and more books. You know, I read Psycho-Cybernetics, whatever I could just inhale the books, whatever I could find, I read. So that was in 75. And I've never stopped. And when I read a quote or a poem or an exciting story, I captured it. Well, back then there wasn't computers. I mean, you didn't just sit down and type it in, you had to write it in a journal. So it's amazing that I still have the stories, the quotes and the poems after all these years, but I treasure them. And so now they're in the book and everybody can read them and treasure them. And you know, they're powerful. I've read these stories, the stories in this book, I've read them 1,000 times at least getting the book ready. I spent 5 years doing it and I still cry. Now, can you imagine reading a story 1,000 times and you read it again and your tears still roll down your face? That's pretty powerful stories. And the ones in this book are powerful. When I was writing the book, the hardest part was the ones I had to leave out because I had so many. I had almost 100 and the book would have been this thick. So, you know, I had to narrow it down to, I think there's 40 something stories in there, plus the quotes and poems. And it was really difficult to decide which ones to drop by the wayside. But the ones I kept are really good. You know, read some of the reviews on Amazon that it kind of, you know, knocks you out how powerful they are. There's stories about people who had the will to succeed regardless of how many times they got knocked down. And they're people you would think that Walt Disney must have had it pretty simple. You know, he's one of the most famous names in history. You know, he didn't have any hard times. But you read the story and you find out there could have been no Disney 6, 7, 8 times because he came to the brink and risked everything and won. So it's, you know, it's fun to read about these people. You know, it's fun to live their life with them. One of my mentors, Tom Hendricks, is probably one of the most, well, he is maybe the most respected businessman in the state of Tennessee. You know, they've dedicated buildings to him at some of the Tennessee colleges. He's one of the people I dedicated the book to. So I sent him the book, and he wrote me a 4-page letter, and he said, "You got a winner. You got a winner." When he said that, I knew it was going to be a successful book, because I respect his business knowledge more than anyone. So that kind of made my day.
Is there a theme? Go ahead,
You
Dan.
mentioned you've been reading these books since 1975. I got it because I consider myself a bit of a connoisseur myself. I got to ask, like, if you had a top 5, or is there like a handful that you recommend?
Well, actually, the back part of the book is set up like this. First of all, how to use this book: long short stories, short stories, poems, quotes, and a list of books for long time slots. And they're in priority order. So if you want my top 5, in fact, if you want my top 100, just get the book, flip to the back, and there's the list. In addition, there's other suggested reading, like broad topics. If you've read all these books and read all these poems and quotes, and you still want more to read, I give them topics to go and research, and interesting people to read their biography or autobiography.
So Think and Grow Rich is up there.
Oh,
right?
I think it's number 1. It's probably number 1.
And then that Mandino one that you said, The Greatest Salesman in the World, In Search of Excellence, by Thomas Peters and Robert Waterman.
Exactly.
12 Pillars, and The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
you're naming my book. You're naming the books.
Yeah. I'm in the back of your book right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No wonder. No wonder.
The Greatest Salesman. That's a good one. That lives on my nightstand. So, have you done? You know, what was kind of a sleeper one that I kind of like, because I also like to. You find certain people that you can see are living that lifestyle, and you can see it sort of working out for them, and that's always neat as well. Have you read Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey?
No, but I would like to.
I would highly recommend it. Yeah, and it's kind of the same sort of thing as this book in some ways, where he's got somewhere it's just like these short stories and poems that he was collecting over the years as sort of being this autobiography at the same time. But it's very much that manifest and lean into it, and lean into the discomfort and those sorts of things.
Exactly. Yeah, I have other books that I'm working on. One of them is called The 7 Secrets of Success. And it's if you follow those 7 secrets and you go back and read about any successful person, you can pick those 7 things out. It's kind of like what Napoleon Hill did. He went out and researched how successful people were. Well, I did further research and came up with 7 things. It took me 40 years to be happy with the 7. But I think I've, hit a home run, but that book's not ready yet, but it will be soon. So
you want to tease? Can you give us a teaser? Can you talk about the 7? Or?
Well, the first secret is you have to get your mind right, or nothing else will work. I mean, if you don't believe, it's not going to work. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can go to work for somebody else and do whatever you want to do with them, and it's their goal and whatever. But if you want to do something yourself, the very first thing you've got to do is believe it's going to be successful, because if you don't, when you get knocked down, you're not going to get up. Well, then it's over. The game's over then. So getting your mind right means you're grateful for your successes. And there's a number of parts to getting your mind right. The second one is to seek wisdom. That's reading every day. Seeking wisdom means that no matter how old you are or how good you are, there's still something you don't know. There's still people that know more than you do that can help you get to where you want to be a lot faster. The next one is to develop skills. So in any business, whether it's real estate or you name the business, real estate, and all the skills break down into 5 different parts. mining, money, maintenance, marketing, and managing. Okay, mining is finding a deal. Money, if you don't have money, you're not going to be able to have much of a business. Maintenance means putting it all together, or in the case of real estate, fixing the home up. And then you have to be able to market it, which is what we're doing, or what we're doing right now with my book. We're marketing the book. And then you have to manage the business. So that's pretty much across the board. So let's see, we've got get your mind right, seek wisdom, develop skills, make detailed plans, take massive action, form great alliances, and be persistent. So each of the people in each of the stories of the successful people have those things in common. And you cannot name anyone, Winston Churchill, whoever you name that's a super successful person, you can just watch. You can go down and each one of those things will pop right off the page at you if you're looking for them. Of course, if you've never been looking for them, you probably never noticed it before.
That sounds awesome. When is that coming out?
Well, I have Real Impact 2, Real Impact 3, and then the 7 Secrets. So it's probably going to be down the road a little bit, but most of it is done. It's even though you have the book written, that's not the end. There's an awful lot more to it. You've got to have it, edited, proofread, formatted, uploaded. I mean, there's an awful lot to writing a book. I thought when I came up with the idea of this book, I said, well, I already got the stories, quotes, and I can put it together in 3 months. I'll have a book. Well, 5 years later, I published the book because you want it to be good. I mean, you don't want it to just be like any. You can go to AI and write a book in a day and upload it and sell it, but how much is it worth? So if someone purchases a book from me, I want it to be worth their time and effort. I want them, when they lay it down, to think, oh man, I'm glad I got that, because that going to make a difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to ask, go ahead, Darren.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I want to ask you about the success part, like, because you jumped right into it. You read the books, you were on fire, you got the success. Was it what you thought it was? Like, has your thoughts about wealth and success changed since then? I mean, I love how you're practicing gratitude. It is one of the most powerful things, like, even, changes your physiology, even like they say. But so, I mean, it seems like you're there, you're content, but was there, along the way, was there any lessons there for, like, money's not kind of, those typical kind of cliche lessons about money and happiness and all that?
Well, I read something the other day that said life is a stream of problems. If you don't have a problem, then there's a vacuum, and nature does not permit vacuums. So if you don't have a problem, you're going to have one pretty soon. Now, how happy you are depends on how you're going to deal with the problems that are going to come. People are going to die. Things are, there's going to be accidents. You're going to get hurt, and you're going to lose things you didn't, people are going to turn their back on you. There's going to be things that you didn't expect. But Abraham Lincoln said, and Abraham Lincoln had some problems, by the way, a fella's just about as happy as he decides to be. So it's up to you whether you're feeling good and happy, no matter how stressful things are or how bad things look. It's still up to you. So I'm wealthy, not because of money, but because of the things that I value so much, like the stories and quotes and poems in the book. They're valuable to me. They're worth, in fact, I do a balance sheet, and one of the things I put on the book, on the balance sheet, is intellectual material. And because of all that, I put $1 million, because that's how much it's worth to me. I don't know if the bankers agree with that, but they've not said anything. But it's worth, well, actually 1.5 million, and probably more. But wealth is not money. Riches are not things. It's how you feel about things that makes you wealthy. You could have $1 billion and be miserable, like some of the people in Congress. I know you can just look at them and tell they're miserable. And they've got millions and millions and millions of dollars. Well, I don't want to trade happiness for that. I just wouldn't do that.
What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to stay motivated or focused? Someone who's fallen off, because it's crazy out there right now.
Okay.
And success has that habit of beating you back a couple times, and how to make sure you stay on point. It tends to it makes you fucking earn it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that, because here's the answer. Get the book, Real Impact Daily Inspiration, read the system, put it into effect, and watch the magic happen. That's it. If someone's struggling, they need the book. One of the comments I got on the Amazon reviews, a lady said, this book came at exactly the time I needed it. I was having difficulties with my business, and I was struggling, and this gave me the motivation, the inspiration, and exactly what I needed to see other people struggle and how they made it. And that made me feel great. I mean, that was worth all of the time and effort and work that went into putting this together.
Would that be the same answer for keeping momentum? People that have a momentum.
Absolutely.
Issue?
Look, this habit is a life-changing habit. Apparently, you already have it, okay? But a lot of people don't. No, and they don't realize the impact, which is the name of the book, the impact it will have if they want to become, let's say, I'm a real estate investor and I've taught real estate investing. If they want to become a successful real estate investor, the first thing you have to do is say, okay, I'm a real estate investor and I'm going to do this. I'm going to have this many homes, have this many apartments, this many doors by this period of time. And the way I'm going to do this is by learning the skills, doing the 7 secrets. And I'm going to do something every single day to move myself closer. And I don't care if I get knocked down. I don't care if things fail. I'm still going to get up and move in that direction. Just imagine if more people did that, how much more successful the country would be. Not just the people, but their families, the communities. People that you see that they're happy and successful, that's the path that they're already on. You don't achieve success by accident. I mean, some people may, but that's really not how it works. It's a stairwell, and you can't skip steps. You have to take it a step at a time, day after day, moving forward. And it's kind of like fighting a battle. If you fight a battle, it doesn't matter if you take losses or the person next to you goes down, you just keep moving forward. That's the only way to win the battle. You have to keep moving forward. So
I think that's so important. That's really good advice. It's like that quote from before you mentioned about little by little, right? If you do that every day, if you're just trying to move forward every day, little by little, after a week, after a month, after a year, you should notice these huge differences.
Exactly. Zig Ziglar, one of the stories in the book, I don't know if you've read the book yet, it's 25,000 books. So he wrote a book and he was so proud of the book. He knew it was going to help a lot of people. He put his heart and soul in it, just like I had done this one. And so he tried to get it published. He talked to all of the publishers of the day and they laughed at him. They said that nobody wants to read a book about Hayek. It's not going to work. And so he found a printer I think it was in Texas, somewhere in southern Texas, maybe San Antonio, who would print the book for him. But in order to get it at a price where he could actually make money, he had to borrow. He had to purchase 25,000 copies. Now that's like 2 tons of books. His secretary helped me with this story. She's wonderful, sweet. She was his secretary for years and years. And the books were delivered to his home in pallets in his garage. And he did the priming of the pump, you know. He put his money in, he put his effort and time in, and he started trying to sell the book. And at first, it went out in just a little trickle. I mean, his garage was full of books, and he would sell a few and a few, but he never quit trying. He just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And one day the phone rang, and it was one of those publishers that had turned him down and laughed at him that was saying, would you consider coming with us and let us publish your book? Well, once that happened, the book really exploded, and you know, it's on one of my top list of books to read.
Did they see the book? Why did they change their mind? Was there a sort of a backstory about them finding the book somewhere, or?
Well, no, he sold 25,000, and then he sold another 25,000,
Oh, okay.
and then he sold another. He'd already sold 75,000 copies when they knocked on his door.
Oh, okay. So that's that's what I was hoping for. Like, cause he's taking action, right? Like he's not just sitting around waiting for things to happen. He's like out there doing it. And a lot of times I feel like when you start taking action, things happen in the background, other opportunities pop up.
Exactly. Yeah. The name of the book is See You at the Top.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I noticed that Outwitting the Devil's not on that list. Have you read it? You can't have missed that one.
What is it?
Outwitting the Devil?
No, I haven't read it.
Wow, that's I would argue that's Napoleon Hill's best book. He wrote it in 1938, but his wife said his wife was worried that it was just a little too esoteric and too obscure, so she wouldn't let him release it. And the state didn't release it until 2011 after they were both dead.
Okay. Well, I have 2 more books coming out, Real Impact 2 and 3. And so I'll read that, and I'm sure it will go. I've read, you know, other Napoleon Hill books. I'm familiar with those.
If you like Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, there's a chapter there on drifting, how it talks about how that's the devil's biggest trick is he just gets 98% of people just to get in the drift of life, where it's this and you get a new job and just finding, you know, and it's only 2% that swim against the current.
Yes. The Master Key to Riches, I think, was a better book than Think and Grow Rich, but it didn't have a better title.
Is that the Charles Hennell book? Is that the one you're talking about?
No, it was one of Napoleon Hill's books.
Oh, I see, one of his. Yeah.
It was just better. Yeah. It was written a little bit later on, and he was better at it.
Yeah.
That the publisher of Think and Grow Rich wanted him to name it a really weird name. Something about use your noodle to get your caboodle. I think that was the name of it. And Napoleon Hill didn't like that. And so he came back and he said, no, I want to name it this. And I don't think it would have sold quite as many with that other name.
No, there's something special about that title, to be honest with you. There really is. Like Think and Grow Rich it's stuck. It's stuck now. It's part of like our culture, really. It is.
Yeah. Somebody, you know, it's funny. Anytime there's something good, evil tries to take it over. So someone has written a book about Napoleon Hill, and they've written it in a negative way. But when I read it, I didn't take it as negative. I thought, well, no, that's not. Yes, he failed and failed and failed and failed and failed and failed and failed. But we all do. I mean, anybody that's been really, you know, Elon Musk has failed. There's nothing wrong with failing. That's part of the success. Because if he had stopped at any of those failures, and the interesting part is Napoleon Hill almost made it big about 5 times. He came within a day of really making it big. Several times. He had everything that he collected over the years in a warehouse in Chicago, and the warehouse burned. It had all of his letters, all of his pictures, all of the research he'd done to write the book, but he didn't stop. He just got up and dusted his pants off the same way with Edison. Edison had, when he was 67 years old, all of his research was in one laboratory, and it caught fire and it all burned. It was all gone. And he saw his wife and he says, "Oh, come over here and look at this beautiful fire. You'll never see anything like this ever again." That was his attitude. And then he developed everything that we know about Edison happened after that. But of course, Henry Ford wrote him a check the next day for $250,000. That helped some too.
That does help. That does help. It tends to grease the wheels.
That's right. Well, it's good to have friends like Henry Ford.
So this is something that I've often bandied about in my own head, is because there definitely seems to be something to this, to the Think and Grow Rich. I mean, the other beauty about the title is the whole book is in the title. I mean, it basically is, the whole book is him trying to hammer that into your head, that if you can get your head right, then you can do great things. And some people seem to be able to, or we don't get to see in the background, so maybe they don't, but some people are able to get to that quickly and other people get, so it almost becomes like a chicken and the egg sort of things, where I find in my own life where I'm able to find a little bit of success, and then I'm able to picture that all these things I was picturing before were kind of small potatoes, or it was just kind of, oh, I can do this, so I dare to dream a little bit bigger, and then you can go a little bit further. And I just kind of, I'm wondering if you've noticed that sort of thing, but it makes you sort of wonder if you can, it's almost like a fake it till you make it. And it's like, is it, are you finding success because you're
recognizing it, which you might not have recognized it before?
Yeah. Or is it just, yes.
The underlying theme of Think and Grow Rich, he never comes out and says, here's what it is. It's kind of a mystery. He's saying, if you read the book, you'll understand. But a lot of people read the book and they don't understand. And then when they fail, they think it didn't work. But they miss the whole point of the book, because the point of the book is, if you read it again and keep this in mind, the point of the book is burning desire. That is the point. That is the underlying theme of Think and Grow Rich. If you have a burning desire, if you can develop a burning desire, it doesn't matter what happens. You can lose all your money, you can lose your health, it's like Job in the Bible. It doesn't make any difference, because your will is going to pick you up and kick you in the butt, and you're going to get back on track until you succeed or die trying. Now, if you have that kind of will, it's hard to stop. It's just hard to stop someone like that. And he had that kind of will. And so do most other successful people, Henry Ford or whoever. And it seems like there's a theme going around to demonize people who've been successful in the past. Disney, Ford, you name it, they were super successful. So people now, they were bad people. Well, no, that's not. That's they were tough people.
Well, I think it's worse than that. They're demonizing people that are successful even nowadays. Modern success too. I mean, there seems to be like a pushback against just success, in a truly free market sort of capitalistic way. Like, yeah.
Well, on that note, what do you think of Ayn Rand?
Oh, I love her. But what can I say? We're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just because right now is this weird time where a bunch of people are just sort of waking up to all sorts of different things in the world. And I just keep sending them Atlas Shrugged. I was like, if you just go read Atlas Shrugged, everything will make a lot more sense. You're like 1,000 pages before the start of that book. If you just picture that, and
Right.
that's the way things are going. I mean, I still think that arguably The Fountainhead is a better book, but I mean, they're both tremendous pieces of literature. So I kind of thought that you would feel that way, but I figured I'd throw it out there and ask anyway, because I would put Napoleon Hill and Ayn Rand as probably my two top favorite and most influential authors.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate because if more people would just buy into common sense, just think what a better country or world we would have. Because it's what everything that she said is just common sense. If you read it, it's hard to argue with it, but people do. They want it to be different because it's difficult. Well, that's just how it is. It's just the way it is. You got to deal with it the way it is.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about imposter syndrome. It's a, it can be debilitating, I think. I mean, how do you get through imposter syndrome? Is it the same as some of these other things, or is there any other advice for that?
Well, I'm not sure. Tell me more.
Well, especially let's say for somebody that's in business, but they might not have the education, and they might just not feel like they're, like they're in over their heads, maybe, so they're going to fake it till they make it, maybe. But I mean, how do you get past the, to realize that you do bring value? Like, let's say it's somebody that is bringing value to their company, to their business, whatever, but they don't feel like they are, they're still in this, like, this lack sort of mindset, or they feel like they're, that they're not supposed to be there, maybe, or they're, you know what I mean?
Well, you remember the 7 secrets of success?
Mm-hmm.
What's the first one?
Mindset.
You got to get your mind right. Well, if they feel that they're not worthy, or if they feel they're not going to succeed, like Henry Ford said, if a fellow thinks he can do a thing, he's probably right. If a fellow thinks he can't do a thing, well, he's probably right. So they're sabotaging their own chances of success by the way they feel. Well, you can change the way you feel. And how would you do that? Well, by my book. It'll turn you around and put you on the right path.
Change the way you think. Yeah, because I mean, I talked to somebody really close to me, and we coach each other through a lot of these things, and she has really good business acumen and intuition, but she doesn't have the official schooling, that type of thing. I mean, and I think my dad went through something similar where he felt like he was kind of like pushing up against the limit because he doesn't have the letters behind his name, but she's really smart. Like you don't need all that to be really good in business. There's an intuition, there's a business acumen, a communication aspect, like just knowing naturally who needs to be communicated to and what needs to be said when and all that. So
well, they need to have her read the Lincoln story, because Lincoln only had less than a first grade education, yet he became one of the greatest orators the world's ever known. He became the president of the United States. He became the top lawyer in Illinois. I mean, all of these things with less than 1 year of education. What was the difference? Well, he tells you in the story, in his own words, what the difference was. And what the difference was is exactly what this book is about.
Nice. I like that. Okay, I'll pass it on. I'll probably send her a copy of your book too.
Good. And look, giving this book to people will literally change their lives. If you have someone like that, just challenge them. Say, here, read how to use this book, and then put it to use, and then watch what happens. Watch how they change. Watch their life turn around. And I'm sincere. I really believe this. I read something one time about what's the difference in super successful authors and everybody else, because there's only a few super successful authors. And the difference is the super successful authors believe in what they've written. They believe they have the best book. They really believe it down in their heart. And I thought, well, I got that, so this book gonna probably work out okay.
How long's it
Garrett?
been out? How long's the book been out?
Came out in March or April. I think it came out in April.
Is it on audio as well?
Yes, yes. And
Did you read it yourself?
we're doing an app. It's an ebook, soft cover, audio, and the hardcover, the deluxe edition. It is so beautiful. I mean, I spared no expense. It's got the best paper. I had an artist do all of the drawings for the inside. The cover is the nicest cover material that you can get, and the binding is perfect. If you give somebody this as a gift, they'll know they got a nice gift, because when they hold it in their hand, they can see that this is really, really a nice book. So, if a grandparent wanted to give their grandchildren something, a legacy that they would keep forever and never forget them, this would be that book. And I know that works. When I graduated from college 50 years ago, my aunt Opal gave me a book that had my name embossed in gold in the front of the book. And I still have it 50 years later, and I still think about her all the time. And I think, well, there couldn't have been a better legacy gift, because anything else she gave me would be gone by now. I mean, what else would you keep forever? But books are easy to keep and easy to see, and they mean so much if they're a quality product. They'll mean something. So if you want to give somebody something for graduation, I know one of my business associates, his son graduated from high school, and I thought, well, how lucky I am that I have something really nice that I can give them, that if they use it, literally change their life, and they may keep it forever, and remember me. I hope they would.
That's a good point. Christmas is only 3 months away. Get some early Christmas presents, people.
That's right.
There you
That's
go.
right. Yeah. And on our website right now, we're having a special where if you buy 2, you get 3. So if you have a Christmas list, that could be, a big part of your list. Maybe you get 6 for the price of 4. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So
Right.
can we, Darren?
One.
Can we go off topic for a sec, or
Yeah. Are you gonna get one is one of them for me?
no?
No.
No. While we've got you here, I mean, can you talk about real estate at all? Is the current state of real estate, like how is things going? Is it still as good of an investment? Have you changed your attitude about investing in real estate over the last let's say 5 or 10 years? How things have gotten a little bit less affordable?
No, John Schaub said, if you can hold a property long enough, it really doesn't matter what you paid for it, but it'll eventually pay itself off. And I have people call me all the time and say, gold's the best investment. It's never been worth nothing. Same way with silver. And they say all these things. Well, I had a student back in 2012 who's a good friend of mine, and he's helping me with my business right now. And I asked him the other day, I said, well, we were talking about that back in 2012. How's that silver doing? And he's, it's great. It's worth 3 times what it was in 2012. And, that's right. Well, I don't know if my houses are worth 3 times what they were, but I've been getting rent on them for the last 11 years. How much rent did you get for your gold and silver? None. Yeah. So how could you do better? You can borrow the money to buy the real estate. You're out nothing. And then you start to collect rent, and it pays the bank, plus you make money on top of that. And then the value of the real estate goes up, especially in Texas. I mean, people are moving here from all over the country because the taxes are better here. And, I had 1 year where all of my properties tripled in value. In 1 year, the value of the property just went through the roof. In California, for about 10 years, the value of the properties doubled year after year after year after year. And then they dropped about 30%, and everybody just, oh my God, real estate is just such a bad thing. Well, just a few years before that, they weren't worth nearly what they were after the 30% drop, because they've been doubling every year. But now there is no better investment. So I haven't changed my mind about real estate. There's no better investment.
Does it matter if does it mean more if you're going to live in your investment compared to just, you know, getting another one to rent out type of thing? Because there are some challenges in Canada with renting. Recently, Vancouver's changed some laws that makes it much harder on a landlord.
Well,
you know, you get bad tenants. There can be challenges with renting too. You know.
Yeah, there's challenges in California. Here, there, you know, if you study and stay on top of what's going on, it's really kind of hard not to do well in real estate investing if you're pretty well on it. And I got 4 or 5 books if you want to learn more about that. You can buy some of my books on how to get started in real estate investing, where to find the money, and all of those. They'll be on the same website as this book, but they're kind of down at the bottom. You have to scroll down to see them.
So
that's good advice.
You've always had a bit of a knack for writing then.
Well, the first books I wrote were so bad. I mean, they were pathetic that I pulled them off. We put them up on Amazon, and I came out and I read them, and I thought, this is awful. I don't want anybody to see this. So I pulled it off. And now, if you try to buy those books, they're like $80 because they're hard to get. There's not that many of them. But no, I wasn't a good author when I started. You know, it was one of those things where I wanted to become good, and I wanted to write like Agmandino. I wanted to be able to write a story that made people cry. And so one of the hurdles that the stories in this book had to get over, it had to be so emotional that it reached into my heart and plucked my heartstrings, so I teared up when I read it. So there's 40 stories in there that are emotional. They'll really get into, and there's one called The Little Girl's Goal. And so when somebody tells me they've read the book, I'll say, what, have you read that part? And if they say yes, I'll say, well, did you cry? And they say, oh, yes. I mean, it'll make you cry. You can't read that story if you have a heart. Now, if you read it and you don't cry, you better go see about yourself, because there's something wrong with you. I mean,
are they all nonfiction or fiction? Is there a mix or?
Well, okay. I put in the front of the book that I used a lot of, what is it called? Artistic
license.
License, exactly. Yeah. They're like in the Disney story. I tell the story of how Mickey Mouse came about. Well, nobody knows for sure. So I wrote the story the way I thought it was. And then I put, oh, but I don't really know because I wasn't there. But it really all makes sense, because if you know all of the things leading up to the story, you can see how that's probably exactly what happened. So, yeah, I don't say it's nonfiction, but it's not fiction either. All of the people are real people. Those things all really happened, but I don't know for sure that they happened in that exact way, although I tried my best to make it as close as possible. There's a story in the book about Martha Berry, and you probably never heard of Martha Berry, right? No, neither one of you, probably most of your audience have never heard of Martha Berry, but she was a fairly wealthy. Her father owned a large plantation around 1900 in northwest Georgia near Rome. And he had like 90 acres of plantation. And she just finished finishing school or college. And when she came home to Rome, she was doing okay. I mean, they were pretty well off. But all of the kids in northwest Georgia well, anyway, in Georgia. The little kids, there weren't any schools for those kids in those mountains. And so she started a little school. And in order for them to come to be in the school, they brought eggs. One brought the cow and they milked the cow. They brought all kinds of, whatever they had, they brought it and got to come to the school. Well, once all the other kids in the area found out about it, the school just grew and grew and grew. And finally it grew to the point where she couldn't keep up with it. It was not, she needed money. And so a little boy came up to her and said, "Oh, Miss Berry, here's a newspaper article that says Henry Ford's got a lot of money and he's giving it to people who need it. And I think we need it." So she wrote Ford a letter and asked him for some money. Well, he had gotten old and crusty and everybody was asking him for money. So he sent her a dime, 10 cents. Okay. Now, this is where I know all of this is true because I actually have the letter. Until this point, everything I've said is fact. It's historical fact. But from this point to the next, I didn't know, but I wrote it as if I did. So she took the dime, bought some peanuts, had her kids cultivate the field. They had 90 acres to work with, so they cultivated the field. They grew the peanuts, and then they harvested them, and then they cultivated a larger field, and then they planted those, and then a larger field, and then they planted those. Finally, had like 88 acres of peanuts, and finally they harvested those and took them to where they bought the peanuts, and they got a check for $1,500. Now it's back to where I know this did happen. She sent it to Henry Ford, the whole $1,500, and said, "Here's your dividend on your dime." Well, when Ford got that, he got in the train the same day and went to Rome. And he saw the little kids working their heart out, and he saw the little shack that was their school, and he left her a massive check. And over the years, they were friends, Ford and his wife, and they all became friends. And he paid her over $3 million. Now, this was at the beginning of the 19th century. $3 million then is $100 million now. And she purchased land. She fixed up at the school. She built a school. And I actually went to Berry College when I went to college for 1 year. It's the largest land college. It's the largest college by size in the world. It's bigger than Disney World. It's 40 square miles. That's a big college, right? But here's the thing. I didn't know about how all of that took place. I found out later that when people visit her home and her old office, sometimes she visits them there. Little kids see her. She talks with these kids. She talks with people. And she's been dead for 100 years. I mean, not 100, but 90 years. And so I remembered when I was writing the story, I didn't really write it myself. I just kind of typed it. It was like someone else was telling me this. And so then I put it together and I thought, maybe I didn't make this up. I don't know.
Exactly.
But it's a beautiful story. I think you'll really like it. I think anybody will like any of the stories because I worked really hard to make that happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, it really seems like the theme with all this stuff is like, don't be a victim. Don't let all these failures, drag you down. I mean, you can obviously fall down, but get back up. And I mean, if she would have been a victim on the whole thing and just said, "Oh, this stupid dime," like, just for example, it seems to be all about just like taking ownership and making it happen.
Yeah, it's people who had will. It's DFWA: desire, faith, will, and action. If you don't have a burning desire, it's not going to work. If you don't have faith, you got to believe that it's going to work. You have to have the will to make it work. You get knocked down, you got to get up. And then you have to take action, 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 action. If you do those things, that's pretty much a recipe for success. How are you going to fail? if you have the will, how can anybody stop you?
Yeah, I get my balls busted sometimes because I'm like, well, as near as I can tell, the only difference between the people who are living their dreams or on the way to living their dreams and the people that aren't is effort. Is they're just, they're just doing it. It's a shame because if you knew this kind of stuff when you were 14, 15, 16, 18, 20, the world would be a different place. But it's not
Yeah.
even readily available for anyone. Most adults don't even know this shit. They're just like, look,
Right.
man, stupid job and my nagging wife, and
Yeah.
they put all their emotional energy into football games and video games, and it's just like if everyone had this mentality, we'd be
Right.
living in that world that they were picturing back in 1920.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned football because I think there's 3 stories or maybe more in the book about football. I'm from Alabama and I love football. I mean, I love football. So I had to put some stories in there. There's one on Lou Holtz, which is just amazing. That man is an amazing person. And then Rudy Rudiger, Rudy?
Yeah, that's the
They've
movie, right?
seen the movie.
Rudy.
Rudy, yeah, that's a great story too because he had no business playing at Notre Dame. I mean, he was too short, and he didn't have the grades. He didn't have any money. There was just no way. It was impossible. But this little kid in high school, he told his friends in high school, "Well, I'm going to sit up and play for Notre Dame," and he did. He did, and that was impossible. I mean, if you just look where he was and where he got to, it was just strictly will. I mean, his willpower and belief. So those things will take you a long way. But people who tried and fail and then they don't get up say, "Well, it don't work." Well, it does. You just didn't get up.
Exactly. Do you think we covered everything that you want to cover from your book?
Well, there is one more thing. I need to give them the website. It's realimpact.life, Life, realimpact.life. And even if you don't buy the book, we're doing a GoFundMe, which is on that website too. We want to give this book to disadvantaged communities where there's schools that are struggling and they can't afford. We want to put books in those little school libraries, in the community libraries, in the adult centers. And we want to distribute these books in places which will help with continuing education and child literacy. Like you said, what if kids started off with this stuff rather than waiting till they're 40 or 50 or 60 years old to start to learn it? What if they learned this stuff when they were 16? And their whole life would become different. So I want to get this in front of as many people that otherwise wouldn't have been able to get it. So, even if you don't purchase the book, maybe you could give $1 or $2 to help the kids.
And how do people do that?
Go to realimpact.life, click on the GoFundMe, and there's a link there where they can give whatever they'd like to.
All right.
It's funny. I think Atlas Shrugged used to be on like the school reading list back in the day, and now it's like banned in like Fahrenheit 451, or is it Fahrenheit 451? Is that the one where they burn all the books?
That's a sad deal.
That's a hell of a sad deal. So before we let you go, you kind of hinted on it, but you mentioned you have a few more books coming up. You got what are your future plans? You got at least 3 or 4 more books in the wings, it sounds like.
Real Impact 2 and 3. Real Impact 2 is a lot of the stories I didn't put in Real Impact 1, but I've found some even better ones. So once you put them all together, there is good or maybe even a little bit better than this one. And then at Real Impact 3, I try not to get too political or too religious so that anybody could pick it up and they wouldn't be put off. Okay. But Real Impact 3, there's so many stories that, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and there's so many stories of how God changed people's lives. and they're just powerful. And they needed to be written down. So the three, I think, fits really well because of the Trinity. How so uh, that one will be sold in religious bookstores and Christian bookstores.
That's a
But
great idea.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Well, Dennis, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on short notice. And I mean, as soon as I came across my email, I knew it was going to be a great conversation because I mean, we're making audiobooks of 3 or 4 of the different ones that are on your list. So I mean, they're very deep into the Grimerica culture. A bunch of these people know exactly what we're talking about. And now the ones that you haven't read it yet, I mean, this is kicking ass to read those Napoleon Hill books and add a new
oh,
one to your list. So
exactly. Yeah, if you get the first book and you've got a list of books in the back that if you read those, you're going to really, you're going to feel it pretty soon because there's some just powerful books there. And if you would send me the books that you mentioned, I'll put them in the next book.
Right on.
absolutely. Right on. Thanks, Dennis. We appreciate you coming on the show. Come back, and when that next book comes out, shoot us an email and we will have you back on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Us too.
Bye.
Yeah. And that was a chat with Dennis Henson. What'd you think?
Yeah, I loved it. That was great.
The guy was
really
you,
fun.
wasn't it? You were the guy you were asking about.
What?
You were the guy you were asking about.
No, no, I've been through the imposter syndrome. Yeah. I mean, dude, I was managing a whole bunch of technical employees. I mean, that's the other thing I was going to mention is not just like the schooling, but like when you're a leader of a whole bunch of technical people where you just don't have the expertise, you have to rely on being a leader, right? Without being able to tell them like, no, do it this way or do it that way. So it's easy to have imposter syndrome when you don't have the actual technical training that your employees have,
I don't get that one.
What? What do you mean?
I don't get the imposter syndrome one usually.
No, yeah, you don't
I
get it.
feel
Yeah,
like
you
I
don't get it.
should have
No.
more.
No, you're the opposite. You're the opposite. Is there what's the opposite of imposter syndrome? It's like the Rami syndrome.
Ram. Anyway, big thanks to Dennis for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Hey, even bigger thanks if you are one of the 1 or 2% that choose to support the work over here over at grimerica.ca/support. It is a not a free. It's all there for free, but we do that in the hopes that if you are getting some value from our little podcast here, you will send some value back our way at grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. And if you do that in the tune of $1,000, we'll make you a lord or lady, which you can join the ranks of some beautiful people there. And either way, we will read your note. So you can do all that. Of course, head over to grimericaoutlaw.ca if you want to check out our other podcast that does definitely lean into politics and religion and all sorts of other controversial stuff over there that we can't talk about over here. And contact at the cabin for the trips. We got another Randall Carlson trip for sale right now. Just went on sale. Bonneville Flood Tour is going to be fun. We got Invermere coming up in just 6 weeks. And for the audiobooks, of course, we talked about a few of them in the show, right? The Master Keys there. Both the Napoleon Hill ones are there. I'm thinking there's some other ones that I'm missing, but head over to adultbrain.ca for the
As
full
a man
list.
thinketh,
As a man thinketh. That's another one, yeah. So the full list is there, adultbrain.ca. Get them everywhere you find audiobooks. Leave it at that. Thank you for listening, guys. We love you, and we'll see you next week.